welcome everyone. As everyone present here knows, this cyclical seminar is organized as part of the project Socioeconomic Consequences of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, financed by the Polish Ministry of Education and Science. The meeting will be recorded and then put on the project's YouTube channel. It is my pleasure to welcome today Dr. Christian Friedl, who works in the Institute of International Management in University of Applied Sciences in Graz, Austria. His research focus is, broadly speaking, on corporate innovation, but he's well engaged with the world of practice. So his findings and what he will share with us comes from first-hand experience as a consultant, trainer. Christian is also head of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor Austria and the coordinator of numerous European entrepreneurship and innovation related projects. So welcome, Christian. Great to have you here. The title of today's presentation is The Age of Collaboration, Benefits and Pitfalls of Co-Innovation. So we give you the floor, and if anybody would like to comment during the presentation, Christian welcomes any potential comments that might come from the audience. Otherwise, the designated time for questions and comments will be after his presentation. But again, like I said, feel free to comment anytime.
Yeah, thank you very much, Agnes, for the nice introduction. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me, and thank you also for your interest. I reckon it must be a very busy time now with Christmas holidays around the corner, so I really appreciate that you devote some time to this. I would like to share, in my view, a very exciting emerging topic, which is in the broader field of corporate innovation, corporate entrepreneurship, open innovation. And this is co-innovation. It's not a yet very well-established research stream. There are related research streams as well. But I would like to show you some insights and evidence we've collected, not only from university and from studies like the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, but also from working together with different companies from different industries of different sizes. And I think it's hopefully a nice inspiration for you also for developing new research questions and opening up new studies. I'm going to share my screen. And I hope you can hear me well. Just let me know in the chat or just open up your mic. As Agnes said, you can also always raise questions. I try to strike a balance between some theoretical inputs, but I also would like to get into a practical discussion with you to make it a bit more interactive. As you know, we spend a lot of time in front of screens nowadays, so I think it's also important to use that to engage into discussions and interaction. Yeah, I have been already introduced. I just let you know that my research focus is very much on intrapreneurship in this whole world of corporate innovation. So I'm really interested how employees across the organization, independent of where they work and which level or management level or even employee level, how they develop their entrepreneurial intentions and subsequent behavior. I've done some research here with developing training offers, digital training offers. For example, I ran a massive open online course with SAP, the German software corporate. And I was happy to do research around that, because the question which stuck with me was that we have thousands of people in those courses, and the platform itself, they have more than 1 million registrations. So there are a lot of employees on those platforms, and some of them learning even in their free time. And I was investigating whether this is, if there is happening really something, or if this is just entertainment, you know. It was quite interesting to find out that at least on the intentions and the perceived behavior control of people, of learners, there were some at least short-term effects recorded. But the side finding of that research was that we can use such open, massive bottom-up training environments as a selection funnel to find the next entrepreneur, which has to be a hard endeavor when it comes to research, because there are some frameworks existing on that topic, but it was rather hard to agree on certain demographics or also, for example, job levels to determine who will be the next entrepreneur. It's a very volatile journey, which changing intentions and over a lifetime. So this is normally my core field of research, but I was also going into the field of open and co-innovation because I had the opportunity to work with different universities, including also your university and other industry partners on the topic of co-innovation, because what we could see is that corporates, large organizations, established organizations are teaming up with small companies, SME startups, to jointly embark on a journey of innovation. And this comes with a lot of potentials, but also with a lot of pitfalls. And research to that topic was a bit limited at that time. So it was very interesting to look into this also from a practical perspective, but also from a research perspective. And this is what I would like to show today. Before we start, as we are not so many people, we can maybe also do this without a Mentimeter. How many people are we? Oh, we have grown, so maybe let's do the Mentimeter. I would like to ask you to go to menti.com and enter the code 78364805. Because it would be very interesting for me, what is your research background? What is your experience level with the topics I would like to cover today? Okay. I hope it's working for you. And you can just let me know in a word cloud 1 to 3 research fields you're working on currently. Okay, I can already see the first entries. I will share the results in a minute. And it's a very valuable input for me as well, because as we will see, this is a very interdisciplinary topic involving different research streams. So you can see the screen here. Can you see the word cloud?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So we see, okay, there is public policies, governmental policies, sustainable development and social innovation, entrepreneurship. Then also from the energy sector, there is someone researching that, mineral resources, double mission firms, also very interesting topic, I reckon. I will wait for a few more entries to arrive. Information technology, project management, education. That's also very interesting, because I will also come back to the industry of education. And I think I would a little bit more if there are more fields arriving, and then we can head to the next question. So I already got a good feeling. What's your background and your research experience and expertise? Thank you very much for that. And we can move to the second question. Sorry, just trying to organize myself. Does the second question already work for you? I will start it now. And I would like to know the experience level you have with entrepreneurship, with corporate entrepreneurship, or also intrapreneurship. Sometimes those terms are used interchangeably. However, there are some differences. Then with open innovation, so when organizations open up to innovate with others, and more specifically on co-innovation as one substream of open innovation. That's the second.
Sorry, Chris, but my Menti hasn't changed.
Mine too. Mine too.
There we go.
Oh, no.
Okay. Hi. You should see something like this. And it goes from 1 to 9, and it's not just give me a gut feeling how much you know about the different topics. It's also for me very interesting to see, and also adjust my way of presenting. You can already see, for those who have answered, that you're most familiar with entrepreneurship. It's like medium familiarity with corporate entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, not so much in open innovation, but a little bit more in co-innovation, co-creation. There are different related concepts, whereas I tend to say that co-innovation goes beyond co-creation because it's also more about the execution and implementation together in partnerships. Thank you very much. That's very helpful for me. Also getting to know you and your background and your expertise with the topics. I would like to speak about the following issues with you today. First of all, I would like to cover why corporate innovation is on the top agenda of a lot of corporates across the world, especially in Europe right now, and why this is the case. So why do established organizations face the so-called innovation dilemma? And then I would like to speak about different industries. Are there differences? Are there larger industries? Before I come to the main topic, which would be co-innovation, and to speak about how you could, or how co-innovation could contribute to overcome this innovation dilemma. What are the potentials? What are the pitfalls? And how could they be tackled? And yeah, we collected evidence from, I have to say, more practice-related research projects, because it involved a lot of interventions and tools and educational trainings we have developed, and we have surveyed them. We have conducted, we've also worked with learning analytics, because it gives you a good idea how people behave in such trainings. There are in-course surveys. There have been an evaluation of the discussion forum. We've also conducted a masterclass on the topic, because that was one main finding of my entrepreneurship research, that such a MOOC can serve well as a selection funnel to let thousands of people learn to a common topic. And those who make it through the course, which are only 5% sometimes, which is a huge dropout quote, but you can then go on and with this small group of identified high potentials with a masterclass, for example, or follow-up coaching, mentoring, or giving them resources. So that's what we have also done in that research. And we have also created a tool where we have observed people working with it in a workshop, like how they could co-innovate using that tool. And we also have collected some evidence from focus groups and case studies. And I hope with that I can give some inspiration for new topics. It's very interesting to see you come from different backgrounds, or your research lies in the different fields. So I think that's a very exciting topic, also when it comes to cross-sectoral collaboration. That's an analysis of the S&P 500 index, and they are tracking the average lifespan of organizations across, or since 1958. And you can see here, this is constantly, not constantly, but in waves, it's decreasing. And it was already around 2012 that this has shrunk down to 15 years only. So we can see a lot of companies have disappeared from this index. And this is a trend which is ongoing. So we can see that the legacy, or also the average lifetime of companies is shrinking. Also in that study, it's stated that if we were listed in the S&P 500 in 1935, the lifespan back then was even 90 years. And today it's here, you can see it 15 years and it's even decreasing. And every 2 weeks we can see a company going off this system. On the same time, we see that this is not a scientific study, but we can see that the lifespans of humans are increasing. So meaning that we will outlive several companies nowadays in our lifetime. And there were companies on this S&P 500 we would have never ever thought they will cease to exist. But this is happening. And the question is, why is this happening fast and faster? And who are those new competitors? And it's also very hard for those organizations to predict this, what we call disruption, because when we look at this graphic, it's hard for them to recognize markets or revenue streams which are far too small to become even relevant for an existing institution. And this is very often when it comes from other industries, from startups, for example, and they operate far away. So it's when you look at it from Five Portals perspective, those are these new entrants, substitutes, which are very hard to predict. It's not new competitors. They come from different industries and they operate with different business models, different cost structures, and they have a completely different potential while offering more or less the same thing. One example I would like to give you when you know the business model canvas, as you are quite familiar with entrepreneurship, I guess you know this tool, the business model canvas by Osterwalder. I'm not going too much into detail, but the interesting thing is if you look at the business model canvas, on the right side, you can see the value creation of telecommunication industry, and this was disrupted by Skype. And they were doing roughly the same offer here in the middle. The value proposition was approximately the same, a similar voice offer. And also here, they were going for mass market, a global reach without limitations of the network. So that's already a bit better to the original offer. But the interesting disruption was taking place backdoors. It was taking place on the left side of the business model because Skype was operating under the cost structure of a software company, meaning they had much less investment costs and they could offer roughly the similar thing on the right side, even better. And we're doing this with completely different cost structure. And for existing telecommunication companies, it was very hard to react once Skype was becoming relevant to them because they had a legacy of infrastructure. They had an infrastructure to maintain. It was very long, a fight about who is having the better infrastructure. And when Skype entered this industry, this was no more or no longer the key driver of competition. Yeah, and Skype was found 2003 in Estland. As you know, they were later sold to eBay, and now they are sold to Microsoft. So you can see that large organizations very often react to such new entrants by acquisition. But acquisition is not the only way you can react to that. And a colleague of mine sometimes called it, sometimes this is a bit of like panic shopping on the Titanic. So because you're already going down, so you have to acquire different startups which were already more than competition to you, but they disrupt your own business model and you're in a very weak position. Similar things happened when you look at Airbnb, for example. They are the largest provider of accommodation worldwide, but they do not own a single hotel by themselves. The same with Uber. When it comes to transportation, they're the largest transportation company worldwide already, but they don't own a single car themselves. So what we can see is that when it started already in 1995, that one industry after another got disrupted. We can see that in 2020, I would say all safe havens are subject to digital disruption. We could learn a lot from the early developments, which was done in the music industry, for example, but also now in TV, which is disrupted by streaming services. But every industry works a little bit different, and we are in different states of disruption in different industries. So what I would like to do is with you is a quiz which comes from the world of practice, and it's always interesting to do them and then reflect on it from an academic perspective. If you would agree to that or not. Of course, you can never ever get a clear answer by just answering 7 questions to that, but it gives you a lot of thought for food, for doing more research into different things. So I would like to run through that quiz with you together. And maybe as we are all coming from the world of education, we could answer it from the perspective of education jointly. Which will also not be easy because it's hard to, I guess it will be hard to get one clear answer to each question. Yeah, so let's start. It's 7 questions based on different, like mostly Harvard Business Review or Sloan Review and other sources, but it's quite interesting. And the first question would be, in your industry, are you experiencing consolidation at the top? And yeah, it's an important sign that an industry could be disrupted, or yeah, the imbalance is a signal. And yeah, often we can see oligopolies where a few companies have consolidated vast amounts of the market. For example, as I mentioned, the music industry, we could see that there are only a few record labels remaining: Universal, Sony, Warner Music. I think also in the iron ore industry, it's the same, or in car rental industries, there are 9 brands controlling 80% of the market. I would like to get an answer from you. What do you think about education? Can we see here consolidation at the top? Not at all. Maybe it's starting to take place. Maybe it has been going on for some time. Or do you think the education industry is already very consolidated? You can answer 1 to 4 in the chat, for example, and then we find the common answer.
So should we think about education in general or only higher education?
I would say higher education, because I think that's easier. Education in general is too broad because there is too much happening.
And in Poland or globally?
Maybe it's easier to go for Poland, but because then you can give the answers. And it's easier maybe to agree, because it might be a different answer doing that from the US perspective.
So 1 would be not at all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And 4 would be already. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So are we between 1 and 2? I can see 3 people answering with 2 and 2 with 1. Do we have more? Okay, I mean, we can go for it. You can also go for it for yourself. It's also always a matter of perspective. Maybe we go for, I don't know, because there are more people for 2, we go for 2 here, if that's fine for you. So this is already a first sign, and it's not so much taking place in education. I can tell you from international examples, or for example, Ukraine, France, or other countries, it's already taking place there. But of course, it depends also on your local situation.
Yeah, I would say that in Poland, our last reform started it, because we decided, or our ministry decided, to create, let's say, the Premier League for universities in Poland, in which there are about 8 universities, and they are supposed to be our prime, most well-known universities internationally. So it makes it makes them stronger, and in that way we could think about some kind of consolidation. There were also, when they decided that there should be only a couple of that most important universities. In Krakow, for example, there were talks about connecting different universities to make some kind of consortium of universities.
Okay, so then I think the answer is, makes quite sense. So it's starting, and let's see what's happening. Thank you. Yeah, so the second question would be, in your industry, customer experience is depreciating. but most legacy companies aren't making any real changes. I had Uber already as an example, and we could see in the taxi industry that's when you went with taxi, you had essentially no choice which one to take. I mean, if there were more cabs standing, then you could have a choice, but you took the cab which was available. You had to fight with other customers for that cab. Sometimes was no any talk about of safety, cleanliness, or the ease of payment. Also, you will never know when you were driving a taxi in a different country whether you pay the right price or not. And with Uber, this suddenly changed, and that's also, I think, for the education industry an interesting question. What would be your question for the education industry? Is it known to have the best customer experience? Do you somewhat disagree with that? Do you agree that the customer experience is not good? Or is the industry even well known for its terrible customer experience? What would you say? It's hard to self-judge us on that, but yeah. I would, for the Austrian system, I would also be between 3 and 4, to be honest, unfortunately. And the idea behind the question is it makes entrance from other industries easier to enter when the customer experience is very bad, because then you have a lot of potential to improve the current incumbency model. So we have 4 and 3 here. Maybe get one more votes then, because we have 2 3s and 2 4s. Maybe Edita, do you have an opinion on that? Okay, then we have a decision. We go for 3, for somewhat disagree. The next question is that most companies in your industry fight with adjacent industry players. So these are markets close to the existing core market to not lose customer contact. There is even an example named here that banks are fighting with technology companies not to lose customer payment interface. That's when banks, for example, team up with fintech, paytech. How is it in our industry of education? Are we looking at edtech startups? Do we fight them? Do we coexist? Do we care about them? So do you disagree with the statement, meaning that we do not fight with adjacent industry players? Would you somewhat disagree with that? Would you agree with that, or completely agree with that?
It's really hard to say. I was thinking between 2 and 3. Finally, I've put 2 because it's a specific situation. Because I guess that that players are corporations, because corporations don't need any more employees with a higher education diploma. So fighting, it's more I guess fighting with them it would be absurd, because especially, we are economics university. So we are supposed to strongly cooperate with that, companies, and somehow we try. So I guess we're trying to cooperate with our entrepreneurial partners.
Yeah. So somewhat agree was the most common answer. And I would also say for the global educational movement, I mean, we can see all those large, for example, also MOOC platforms reaching out to European students, and I think it's a hard game to fight, and I think we need to find ways how to coexist or even to collaborate, as you said, Marek. This is it's not very hard to answer, but I don't know if you read CB Insights. It's a research company which is following all the trends, investments, acquisitions. They are doing this with based on data to avoid the 3Gs, like Google, gut instinct, or guys with MBAs. They consult on strategic issues, and Steve Blank was the founder of the customer development process and also co-founder of the whole lean startup movement in the startup community. So it's quite somebody to say something, but however, this is a bit of a subjective judgment. I don't know if you read CB Insights. If you're there quoted very often, it's a slight indicator that your industry is closer to disruption. For education, I read every now and then about education in CB Insights. I would go for free. I don't know if you read CB Insights. If you do, you can put an answer here. I can see Agnes also agreeing. I would say it's mentioned every now and then. Yeah, I would say it's not the strongest indicator here, but it's also interesting to compare it with a fractal like this. Yeah, then also the costing structure. It's interesting if in the industry most of the players have an opaque costing structure or not. How transparent are the costs? And sometimes there are a lot of intermediaries in between. But we can also see a lot of companies, corporates going closer to the final customer. And it's also, I think, very interesting for universities. I would like to know how opaque or transparent or intransparent the costing structure of higher education in Poland is. In Austria, it's very intransparent, to be honest.
Well, I guess in Poland, it's also hard to say for students what exactly they are paying for, but yeah. I wouldn't connect it with some kind of revolution, because it is just how this industry works for years. Mm. And this is how public sector works.
yeah.
Although it should be very opposite if it's public money.
Exactly, yeah. I have the same feeling about Austria. So you pay your student fees, but you have no idea for what they are actually used, and you're not paying directly for the customer experience, or what you're paying for, you don't know exactly. So there are 3, 4, yeah. 3. Okay, let's go for 3. And yeah, then we have 2 more. That's something I think is also related to the Porter's 5 forces about the regulatory entry barriers, whether they are high or not. And I think this is self-explanatory, but for higher education, how would you say, how hard are the entry barriers for new entrants when it comes to higher education? In Austria, they are quite hard when you want to be part of the official system. But the question then again is, what's the...
my comment is, as long as people want official degrees and diplomas, yes, it's 4, definitely very difficult to provide those. But as long as people want education, I would say 1. So it really depends, what we're asking for.
Yeah, true. So let's say we go for the official degree, and we hope it's still valuable, because then it's easier to answer. So we have here 3 and 4. Okay, it now goes clearly towards...
In case of education, it's not so hard, but in case of higher education, there are, I guess, a lot of bureaucratic barriers.
Yes. We just created a new master program. It took us altogether 5 years on the topic like digital entrepreneurship, and yeah, you can maybe understand how we feel. It's a very recent topic, and you need to anticipate years upfront what topics are there to come, and then hopefully you're there on time when you can start teaching. So let's go for, it's very difficult when we think about higher education and official degrees. And the last question is, are the customers in our industry using outdated technologies because the majority of players or major players are relying on legacy infrastructure? Would you agree to that when it comes to higher education? And also here, maybe it's a difficult question because with COVID, a lot of things changed, but at least also we struggled a lot with that in Austria, with infrastructure. But that was certainly a push we needed. So we're here for three or four. 3.5, yeah. So we're slightly more at 3 now with the answers so far. Just wait for a few seconds more. Okay, then I go for somewhat agree. Some would say completely agree. Yeah. The thing is that we get a score which tells us we should act now. And of course, there were some answers where you could discuss about. It wasn't, the exercise was not about like, getting an idea if the questions are the right ones to ask. But I think it's an interesting way of looking at an industry and how they can be disrupted completely from the perspective coming from practice, coming from people, from organizations working with a lot of companies worldwide. And I think it would be very interesting to contrast this also with recent research on disruption, on industries, and also to do it for different industries and compare. Yeah, I don't know what you would think about that. You could let me know also. Would you agree with the result on higher education?
I would. There are examples of universities that are changing quickly, offering a new, testing different solutions and offering new ways of learning and even experimenting, because that's what it is really. When to avoid disruption, you do have to experiment and even allow yourself to fail sometimes, test different approaches.
Yeah.
In education, as we all know, it's not so easy to experiment, fail, and move forward. 2 steps forward, one way back. It's because we are large organizations, especially in Poland. The universities are large organizations, so they're not very flexible, and we need to be regulated. So it's really a dilemma to for this industry, because it's public education, so it absolutely must be regulated, and there must be quality standards to be met and procedures and all of that.
Exactly.
But that inhibits change.
Yeah. That's I think an extreme example of established organizations being within limits for a good reason, because we need to have them. On the other hand, it's really a roadblock towards innovation. Yeah.
And I think that this disruption is will be much faster and much more destructive than we even think about it. When you are thinking, I read several papers about so-called education 4.0 and the changes during in the future. Yes, the perspective of changes, and I think that they saying one simple truth: education, but for what? Yes. We are education is for people to finding the job, so we need to think about the criteria of employers, and this is the problem, because they do not pay attention to higher education as we think about it. They need skills and people who came to work, and now the problem of diplomas, and maybe it can be important and high level of management or something like that, but I think that 80% of people who starts his job career do not pay attention for the higher education, and I think that we must think that higher education is not only a school, not only the universities, colleges, and so on. There are some business, especially in IT, when I have an inside look, we have some so-called academy. Yes, we have IBM Academy, Microsoft Academy, Oracle Academy, the full course of skills they need to become the professional. And it must come to us too, yes? And it must change the whole education on a higher level for sure, but I think that it year by year will go lower and lower. I think that secondary school can be inflected by this.
Yes, yes. I couldn't agree more. We can see, like, also LinkedIn, for example, they are, I mean, it just makes sense. People are entering their job offers and also the skills they have, so we can match the skills needed, the skills they have, and they can just go into those gaps and offer specific tailored courses for that. That they are already starting to do that. Microsoft now owning LinkedIn, and also Amazon. Think about those things. Google is teaming up with universities. You learn on the job, on the fly, very specific small credentials. You can see micro credentials on a European level evolving. So I couldn't agree more. It's coming. However, I don't know how we should react to that. And one thing we could react to this could be co-innovation, coming back to the topic. Yeah, but yeah, thanks for the comment, and couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think the trend, it's exciting to talk about it because it's our industry, but I think the only way is to, how do we make these disruptions work to our advantage? How do we approach them as opportunity, not as threat? So coupling with the disruptors would definitely be the way to go, which does not mean we don't need to change as an industry as a whole. Definitely we do, but I see a lot of potential in coupling with the disruptors, actually.
Yeah, that's perfect for our topic, because I'm going to talk about this now. Just maybe there's one more interesting index. I don't know if you know about the Global Innovation Maturity Index. It's also more from the praxis rate decided. We can also question the methodology sometimes, how they ask questions, but I always think it's very interesting to get inspiration, what's really going on out there, how our industry players finding their answers to what's going on, and then come back to research and see what we can do about that. Yeah, I give you the slides anyway, so you can check it out later. Maybe just one last thing, because we speak about a lot of terms here, and innovation is one of those terms which are used very frequently, as we had digitalization or digital transformation or globalization previously. Everybody's talking it. And also CEOs, 90% of them say that long-term success is depending on their ability as a company to innovate. And it's a bit disturbing when we hear that 56% of those leaders say that they are, however, unclear on how to think about innovation strategically. And even more, almost like 53% of those leaders say that their board often talks about innovation, but nobody seems to be clear about what it means. There is a lot of different understanding. Should we do incremental innovation? Should we go for the disruption? There is, it can be anything, and I think maybe to have a less academic but more fun cartoon on how you could explain corporate innovation in practice. Sometimes it's really happening like this, what I can see in a lot of organizations. So the idea department comes up with a new great idea, could be a new business or something, but it doesn't really fit the core. And they have no planned budget for that. And of course, they also need the resources for other things to do. And they have a different agenda. Their middle management is incentivized on short-term outcomes. And so that sums up pretty much this innovation dilemma Clayton Christensen was already speaking of in 2003, where he said that it's large for hard organizations because they have to care about the core business first. They have to satisfy shareholders, and they are not designed to be flexible and innovate. But as you know, Netflix started out with shipping DVDs with postal services, so there is still hope, and Netflix is an excellent example of how to constantly rethink design their DNA and innovate in a new way. I don't know if you have read when we speak about corporate culture, there's this freedom and responsibility culture slide deck existing on the internet where the CEO Reed Hastings is elaborating on that culture in 129 slides. And the interesting thing is it's really walking the talk there, because they hire and fire with this culture, with these values they have laid out there. And yeah, it's very interesting to see. It's even an organization where they don't have official holidays, so people can come and go whenever they want. And things which are impossible at the moment to think of in Austria, but it's a very different approach how to change the DNA of a large organization, because Netflix is a large organization, as we know of 2021, but they still maintained this innovation spirit within their culture. And yeah, it's an interesting thing to read. I can also share with you the slide deck of the CEO. It's even on their website. They really walk the talk, which is not the case in a lot of corporations like this. And you can also take a look. There is Sifted, which is one of the best newsletters, I would say, from practice about corporate innovation. Super interesting also to see there's a whole directory of corporate innovation across Europe. You can see what corporates are currently doing to overcome this innovation dilemma. And they're doing a lot of different things. From internal innovation, entrepreneurship, they're also having corporate entrepreneurship schemes. They're also reaching out to external partners. They're opening up accelerators, incubators for internal ones, for external partners. They are using venture capital funds. Corporate venture capital is one of the fastest rising investment options in the startup world currently in Europe. And then we also have this opening up, open innovation, and more specifically co-innovation programs. And this is what I would like to speak a little bit more of today, because it's quite new and it could become a very interesting established research stream. And the idea behind this is when you imagine now education and your university as this cruise ship here. Sometimes people say it's more like an old oil tank, but let's look at it from a positive perspective. It's a cruise ship designed for perfection. So we're very good in what we're doing currently. We have a core business, and this can also be for any other industry. So we're designed to be efficient. We are designed maybe not so much for university, but normally a corporate is designed for efficiency. We are rolling out our core business. We are understanding our customers very well. We have satisfying our shareholders. We're designed for perfection. We are designed to stay. We are designed to sustain the business. And the good thing is we are quite stable. The bad thing is we are not able to move fast, to turn, to be flexible, to answer to new trends, because yeah, everything is designed for perfection. And there's no room for innovation or things of the core business. On the other hand, we can look at startups or new entrants, small companies, but also large companies in the meanwhile. There's also corporate innovation, a topic for co-innovation. But let's look at startups as speedboats. They can navigate. They maybe fell off fast because they're not so stable, but they can try out new things. They don't have so much risk to invest like a corporate with a brand, with an established customer bases, with clients, with a value with suppliers along the value chain. So they can experiment and they're quite flexible. Thing is, they lack resources, they lack networks, they lack stuff and a lot of different things, sometimes technology, sometimes legal support. But if you would bring together both worlds, on the first glance, there would be a lot of potentials, because the speedboat can search for new things, and the corporate can provide stability, resources, insights, experience, market access, whatever. And there are different terms connected. Below I've provided some sources if you want to have a starting point. And I would see co-innovation as a substream of the large stream of open innovation. And when we look at studies or reports surveying what are European corporates doing in the last years, we can see an exponential increase of those kind of collaborations. Every corporate is putting out a hook to collaborate with startups in one or the other way. So there's a lot of potential benefits, as I have just elaborated. So on the one hand, corporate struggle. It's also the war for talent, what we spoke just about. It's hard for corporates to attract alumni. People are less and less willing to go for this typical 9-to-5 job. They need also sandboxes, like safe environments where they can experiment. They also have cultural issues, like we currently just spoke about in the university world. It's reluctant to change for good reasons, but it is, and this is not good for innovation. And of course, there's everywhere this fear of getting disrupted. On the other hand, we have the startups. They are facing more and more competition. We can see more and more startups, so you have to fight for the same investments available, for solutions to specific problems. Solutions are getting more and more complex. It's not about this software eating the world mantra anymore. So it's not the tech guys in the garage disrupting whole industries. Nowadays, when we also speak about University 4.0 or Industry 4.0, you have to involve hardware, software, and this is not so easy to be done as it used to be anymore. It's also not so cheap and fast anymore. When you, for example, the European deep tech scene, there are studies existing that this research phase is much longer as it used to be previously, when you really want to excel in deep tech. So they're searching for new strong partners, and when they team together, it can be co-creation of something new, product, services, processes. It can be just access to resources, networks, markets, knowledge, experience, technology. But sometimes also it's about leveraging organizational culture for both sides. Also for the startups, it's interesting to team up with an experienced partner who has rolled out a business model multiple times before in different markets. So it's a mutual learning opportunity. Yeah, and you just raise your options. And that's, I think, a very important thing when we speak about innovation portfolios you need to run nowadays. And so there are many more potential benefits. However, if done right. And there are a lot of pitfalls involved, and very often it starts with very common myths and misconceptions about co-innovation and about the other partner. So let's try to run through them together. The first statement we hear very often, there are a lot of benefits, but only few corporates have already tried to collaborate with startups because they are unaware how to find them. They perceive startups as unstable. It could damage their brand. They don't know where to start, how to start. They don't have a follow-up plan for that. Do you think that's true or not? Do you think it's a myth or it's a fact that this? What would you say? You can use the chat again. Would you agree or disagree?
I guess it depends on the industry, because in IT, I assume it's very popular. Also in financial industry. Yeah. But for corporations, let's say from petrol industry or HR, I guess maybe there's less cooperation with startups and less need for it.
Mm-hmm. That's, of course, we can see that there's large differences. Very often industries who are already disrupted or at the door of disruption, there's more collaboration going on, because sometimes this is the last idea existing companies have to prevent being disrupted. But you would be surprised, it's actually a myth. There was a recent report, they have surveyed 340 corporates across 70 countries, and 89% of them have already tried to collaborate in one way or the other. This can be a very basic collaboration, like organizing a hackathon or something, just inviting, open up your doors. But interestingly, this also surprised me, that almost any corporate has already tried in one form or the other to reach out to startups.
Actually, in Poland, this is not well known, but one of the already for 10 years, I think Tauron is running its startup accelerator, Grupa Azoty as well, the chemical plants. So these Tauron is energy industry. So these these giants dominating the market in traditional industries, actually in Poland, they don't message it a lot. KGHM as well. They have been experimenting and running their startup acceleration programs for years now. And I found that very surprising in the research we did with Maria Urbaniec 3 years ago, I think. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, and you can see in that study, what's not here, it's also included that a lot of them are trying, but I think 45% of corporates are dissatisfied with the experience, and even 55% of the startups. So there's still a lot of work to do, but people are, or organizations are already teaming up and getting to know each other. Yeah, that's also interesting, because when we speak about those differences, if this is true, the majority of entrepreneurs have been employees in organizations before. Why are there any differences? Why is it so hard to collaborate? They should understand each other. Do you think that's true or not? Do you think the majority of entrepreneurs have been employees in organizations before?
Do you mean founders of startups?
Yeah.
No, I think that. I think I was an entrepreneur several years ago, and I can say that everyone who knows how it works has a little bit afraid how to start such a business alone. So I think that this really applies for young people without many experience, but without needs of doing something new.
Yeah, also here, I mean, this is the answer according to one study, which was by the Harvard Business Review. There they say it's true that the most of the entrepreneurs, they have been working employees in one way or the other before. We also see that in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor that the average age of people founding an organization is 37 years old, giving us the idea that most of them have already worked in one existing organizations or the other. Yeah, but interestingly is that there are still a lot of misconceptions, even if that gives us an idea that both sides should understand the other side because they have already worked for them. That's a hard one actually for me, because coming from research as you do, I would like to have this statement true, which statement is higher R&D expenditures result in better financial performance of a company. Do you think that's true or not?
In IT, when we are talking about the IT, there are several sources that shows that there is no any relations between expenditures on IT and the financial results of the companies. So this not work like this.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. Yeah, we can see this also on national level. When you look at the innovation index of a nation, there is also an indicator about under and over performers, and Austria, for example, is a underperformer. So we invest more in R&D in terms when you rank the countries compared to the impact we achieve with that. Netherlands, for example, is very good. They are, when it comes to investment or input in R&D, I think they're around place 10 or something. But when it comes to impact, they're place 3 in the global rankings. So the same is true for companies. Like PwC, they have a large global innovation study. It's, I think, for the last 12 years now that they survey those companies and how much they spend on R&D and try to find correlations with their financial performance. And unfortunately, there is no correlation found by this study. Of course, we also need to change or take a different perspective when it comes to different industries. This is one study, but it shows us that it's very important to see how those R&D spendings are actually turned into innovation when it comes to need and market need and the ability to reap potential benefits and create revenue streams. One example I always use is Kodak, which had 8,000 patents filed in their organization, but they were not able to exploit them, to sustain their business with them. And you know how the Kodak story went. So that's one thing. Maybe it's a good starting point to invest in R&D, but it's also about how to convert this R&D euro or dollar or whatever you invest into at least €1 in outcome. Yeah, and then maybe this is also interesting. What do you think? Is it hard to get this match done between a startup and a corporate? Is this the main challenge in most startup collaboration, or is this only the beginning? Do you think the challenge starts after you matched those partners? Do you think it's harder to get them matched, or do you think it's harder after you match them?
I guess it's harder after.
Yeah. Also in the chat, I fully agree. So this is unfortunately true, because it's also an indicator of the study I showed at the beginning that a lot of partners already try, but a lot of them are, here even is the study where 45% of corporates have been dissatisfied or very or somewhat dissatisfied, and 55% of startups. And yeah, the problem is that at first you have some sort of honeymoon. You're getting engaged with a new partner, and sometimes startups are over-promising because they want to get the corporate as a partner. On the other side, the corporate doesn't have a clear strategy. Sometimes it's more about employer branding or doing new things, or sometimes it's even worse. It's tech scouting and stealing ideas from startups, and they don't really mean it to collaborate. So it's easy to get together because everybody's interested in each other, but to keep this collaboration going, this is actually really hard. And that's really hard because of this last myth, because of course it's not true. That's why I will ask you, but corporate always think an entrepreneur, or also the entrepreneur themselves think that they have unlimited freedom, and they don't, because they're always working with limitations when it comes to funding, when it comes to their own time, when it comes to team size, when it comes to market access, when it comes to whatever. And also corporates have very unlimited resources when it comes to innovation. Of course, they have more resources, but as you know, in the COVID-19 pandemic, there were two very different ways how companies reacted to that. There are already studies existing to that. One of them were investing even more in innovation, but the larger chunk of companies, they were at first moment, they just froze and focused on the core business, and everything besides core business, and this was also innovation, was reduced. And if you ever have read studies about innovation departments or spoke to innovation departments, they operate under very hard control, and it's very hard to prove success to financial department, for example, because they operate with different KPIs. It's very focused on return on investment and stuff like that, which is relying on data from the past, and that's very hard for innovative projects which are always forecasting into the future, and you do not have any legacy data. And very often we see great innovation projects killed too early, and we see bad innovation projects sustained for far too long, wasting too much time and money because of this difficulty. Yeah, so we can see a lot of things, and also this is this misconception people have about the other side, and you can make a lot of mistakes. So you can have you have a different language. I mean, already the terms which are used in the startup world and the terms in the corporate world, they're really different speed of implementation. They have different agendas. So corporate sometimes just wants to do tech scouting. The startup wants to get the resources of the corporate. This does not always align well. Different decision making. So it takes very long in the corporate. You have to run from department A to B to C and then to F, and finally come out after 2 months with a declined decision, for example. And for the startup, this can be within 10 minutes sometimes, but then also the startup has maybe stakeholders or shareholders, or somebody who owns equity in their decision board. So it can easily get difficult. Different procedures, different risks. The startup takes a high risk if the corporate is the only partner. So imagine the corporate changes their strategy and drops the startup. This could mean also the end of the startup for the startup. Different expectations, different eye level. Very often we see the startup not being able to negotiate on eye level with the corporate because they have 10 other startups sitting in the line. So you can see a lot of potential for pitfalls. And that's one tool we created in one of the projects. We also used it for research because we used it in this MOOC on co-innovation, where we had more than 2,800 registrations and about 1,700 active learners. And they were working with that tool, and we monitored how they were doing it, what different drivers, deciders, contributors they would use for that. And this is what you think first of by answering this question as a perspective of the startup. You do the same as a corporate, and then you come together in the middle column and elaborate on the goal, on the format, the outcomes, risks, and KPI and milestones, how to measure whether this co-innovation journey is actually successful or not. Yeah, I think I talked quite long already now. I give you some examples here. If you would like to see in the slides, what could be potential drivers? Because I think from the research perspective, it would be very interesting to do more research here, because I couldn't find any good research on that so far. There is a lot of papers about how it's currently done, about what are the benefits, what are the pitfalls. But I think if we go one layer deeper to understand the problem, we could do research about the difference of the drivers of both sides, also what kind of resources besides the main product or thing they would like to sell as a startup could be brought to the table, and what do they expect from each other. And if we do research on those both things, I think we can find out great new directions how to also guide startups and corporates in practice how to do that better. Because also research here on the middle column, there's much more existing, which formats to exist, what are typical outcomes. So there's a lot of things existing here, but I think on the left and the right side, there's a real interesting research gap. And I think we need to understand first both sides, both perspective, before we come back to research on the middle column. Yeah. If you're interested, that's a MOOC we have built on a topic, a masterclass we've done to this. Everything of that is available for free. It's open source. And if you're interested in the research I'm doing, please reach out, let me know. It's always interesting to do that together. It's also about co-innovation in research. I think it's very important to co-inspire each other. And yeah, I hope I wasn't talking too long and it was still interesting for you. I also hope I struck a balance between practice and research. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. And if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask.
So maybe I will ask, how do you see the role of universities in such a co-innovation? Whether universities should be or could be some kind of facilitator for such partnerships, or they can engage as a third partner somehow? And what your experiences are in this area in Austria?
That's I think the best question you can ask, because I forgot to mention it, and thank you very much. And I see both things I mentioned. One thing is, as we saw already when we answered the survey to the status of disruption when it comes to higher education, I think it can be, on the one hand, nice for universities to reach out to those new companies, being it edtech companies or startups in the field, but also large corporations which are already doing interesting things here. because what we can offer from university is this research evidence, knowledge, and one thing else we can really offer, and we are not always aware of that, is trust. And trust is a very great leverage when it comes to being an intermediary in this co-innovation thing. The second thing you mentioned, Marek, that we as universities can be the facilitator effect of these collaborations, stay in the game, because this corporate startup collaboration is happening also without us, unfortunately. But I think we need to come back in the game, and what we bring to the table is trust. And I think this is an asset we should be aware of and use it, and yeah, to stay within the game and being able to change and not being changed.
But do you have an example of a university or other higher education institution which is let's say an umbrella for some kind of startups, and corporations contact that university asking, we need startup from such an area, we look for such an ideas, can you contact us with some kind of startup which possibly could offer us such a solution?
Yeah.
Is it work like that somewhere in Austria, for example?
Yeah, for example, in Graz, it's not my university, unfortunately. It's the University of Graz, but it's where I also studied, did my PhD, so I'm closely connected with them. And they just built a 6-story high building, which is the central university startup incubator. And there they do exactly that. They're inviting corporates, startups, they connect them, and to try to be part of the journey then also as well, by either researching that, by being facilitating that, by bringing in the students to be part of both sides. They can be innovation managers, for example, in those companies, or also researchers, but they can also be the entrepreneurs themselves. So it's a very interesting thing to reconnect with the whole ecosystem. And one example is the University of Graz. Another exciting example is Wageningen in the Netherlands. They've created an entrepreneurial ecosystem around their university. So they are combining everything. We also spoke about MOOCs and micro-credentials. They also have open innovation, open research, and they have different layers of that ecosystem where they see, for example, the core, the campus life, but then the surrounding field where they have already the closer collaborations, the open innovation initiatives, for example. And then also they do insourcing of different things like MOOCs. They, for example, when they teach, they don't see a need to teach for the millionth time basics in algebra when you have an existing excellent online class existing. The asset you bring to the game is that you can let the students watch it themselves, but then you have to discuss, how does it fit into our context? What is your opinion about that? Because that's also a dangerous thing which could happen if we just take the existing offers, especially from America. We're Americanizing our educational system, and I think this is not the very objective of the whole thing. But that's also another interesting example, Wageningen University. Then, of course, we have examples of when you see the Hasso-Plattner Institute in Germany, they are also connected with the University of Potsdam, and they are also working together with SAP, where they have this common training platform. And this is closely interlinked to the University of Potsdam, the Hasso-Plattner Research Institute, and the large corporate SAP. Also, the World Health Organization is part of that consortium. It's also a very interesting idea how to co-benefit from collaborating across very different industries for the sake of education.
As far as I remember, at our university, we had also an incubator within our academic career center. However, I look now at their website, and I guess it stopped working. I don't know whether there was no need, or maybe in Krakow that can be an answer. We had a better specialized institution for incubating startups, so maybe our offer just wasn't interesting for them anymore.
Mm-hmm. We just have been at Haga Helia in Finland, and they also have a startup school And the founder of the startup school told me about, for the students, it was always great, but it was very hard, and you had to fight a lot of internal fights to make this happen. And so I think in our university, it would be the same, because you have to align different faculties. They're already teaching entrepreneurship in one way or the other, mostly different ways. And you're, entering their home turf. So this is always also creating reluctance, and you need to get everybody on board. You need to have, I think, top-level decision makers behind you to make that happen. And in that case, in Hagahelia, it was the case, because they had top management support and the resources, but still it was a hard fight, which took years.
Yeah, because in Krakow we have a special economic zone, and there's a huge institution called Krakow Technological Park, and they are one of the most important innovative actors from public sector, which are some kind of facilitators with all innovative startups, small companies, and they have built a couple new buildings with all that technical support entrepreneurs need. So I think in that case, creating such incubator at university, we're just not competitive with that kind of offer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe have in Graz, we also have both things. There's a science park, but still there was they're more focusing on later stage entrepreneurship. In the university, it's really early stage to get the fresh ideas from the students and help them on the first steps. And later on, many of them use or move into science park, where they can follow up. So this is more like an entry point, I think. It's like really an incubator, and in science park, it's more an accelerator. So that's how they manage to not like go into competition, but to even build a sledge, towards entrepreneurship. But that's of course also an issue. And even when we speak about idea contests, for example, there are too many in Graz at least, and we are a small town, but you can have 1 month another idea contest. There's desperately searching for entrepreneurs because it's a hot topic at the moment. So everybody is doing something, but it's just like this one-time endeavors, and there is no like greater strategy behind. And I think when you anchor this at a university, that's a unique opportunity, because it's institutional and it's going to be there hopefully longer. And you know what I mean? It's not just an initiative.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Do you think, I have a question, do you think that universities embrace the potential that startup incubators have for them? Because very often I see that the narrative behind these ideas and projects of starting up a university incubator evolves around doing something for the students, whereas the potential of startup incubators is not exploited for the benefit of the university itself. And I just think if we are committed to building an innovative European society, I don't see why there shouldn't be a startup incubator at every university, including, medical, other sciences, because it's also setting, I think, the mindset of young people. And I don't know if you agree, but I think universities in general don't have a clear strategy and agenda for contributing to building that kind of entrepreneurial mindset society, and they don't see the full potential of creating incubation processes within.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's I mean, we're a small round, but that's exactly the problem of our university. So we have no problem agreeing to a career center, and also there you might think it's for the benefit of the student, but the real idea behind it is to get in contact with future employers, to build up also this relationship, and it comes much more back, when we stay in touch with our alumni, and we invite them back as lecturers when they have expertise in a certain field. They are also our word-to-mouth promoters. It's much more impactful when the recommendation comes from somebody who is, in work life, as it comes from yourself. Exactly. And the same thing is with incubators. And our university, for example, we are already also contributing to the science park. And that was the answer by our rector, that we're already spending money on that. But that's exactly not the objective you just said, Agnes. It's not, we're giving it out of our own hands. So we give money to a third party that our students could eventually go there, but they go out of our door and they're now connected to Science Park and not our university anymore. If we would have this incubator within our university, it's a much stronger connection. We can do much more things. We can build much stronger relationships. And a listening point about the market, right?
Exactly,
I think it's a membrane, and
great listening point. Yeah.
Fully agree.
Yeah. And creating those safe sandboxes is, I think it holds great potential for every institution.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an investment, but I am convinced that there is a lot of payback, and in different forms again here. Also, it's different. It's difficult to measure everything with financial indicators. However, it's important, of course. But there are so many things in addition happening around that which need to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, at the incubation phase, the young founders need to do market research, and we need that market research very often.
Mm-hmm. True.
For example, that's just one example of the potentials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, Marek, I will let you wrap up, I think, because we're running out of time. Thank you from my side. Thank you, Chris, for being our guest and sharing.
It was a pleasure, really. Yeah,
your
thanks a lot.
insights and coming from firsthand experience. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was really a pleasure for me.
Thank you very much. And like I said, please, Christian, send us your presentation, and I will share it with our team members.
I will. Yep.
So,
thank you
very much.
Have a nice day, and nice Christmas already.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Perfect presentation. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.